Moreover, also UNESCO is requiring us to come up with concept for sustainability, also resilience. So it's not only about conservation of World Heritage Sites, it's also about developing and development in a sustainable manner, as well as coming up with concepts of resilience in ever and ever more complex World Heritage properties. And what we see immediately that it's not so easy to maintain and to preserve historic urban landscapes. This is just one illustration. This is London. It was also earlier discussed today. St. Paul's Cathedral is the World Heritage, and of course we see transformations of the historic city silhouette in the recent decennia. So we need to have instruments to evaluate the visual integrity of properties, also cumulative impacts of urban developments. We see also issues of the functional integrity of World Heritage properties. We had a large discussion in Germany roughly 15 years ago about the build and the construction of a bridge, which then led to the withdrawal of the World Heritage property of Basin-Elbe Valley from the World Heritage list in the year 2009. So we see also that urban and infrastructural developments can, of course, cause great conflicts in World Heritage properties. But we see also human-induced catastrophes, such as war activities. And Palmyra is just one example for that, or Ukraine, or also Dubrovnik, which was completely destroyed 20 years ago, roughly. So we need also have to have instruments for risk management after catastrophes, or even prior to catastrophes, in order to preserve our heritage properties. This is a quite old study dating from 2013, roughly 10 years old. It's kind of an assemblage of all kinds of conservation reports. And this report was basically saying that more than 70% of World Heritage properties would suffer under management issues. Then at least 30% would suffer under transportation infrastructure and new development projects or buildings and development. In Germany, we do have at the moment a lot of discussions about alternative energies and how this is going to transform heritage properties. So also climate change will have a major impact on heritage properties and World Heritage properties in particular. In my view, this is one of the reasons that UNESCO launched in 2011. It was first the ICOMOS manual on heritage impact assessments, and this was recently republished by this publication here, the Guidance and Toolkit for Impact Assessments. So it's a further development on the impact assessment, and in my view, impact assessment has become one of the tools in order to evaluate all kinds of these kind of transformations I've just been showing some examples for. But what is an impact assessment? It is more or less an evaluation process where we try to identify, to evaluate issues in or in the surrounding of World Heritage properties. Where we also try to integrate findings and conclusions into planning processes, and in the best case, we would be able to come to mitigation solutions and enhance positive outcomes. That at least is the international definition of the International Association of Impact Assessments. So we are talking about processes in World Heritage, in the context of World Heritage, and in order to evaluate impacts on World Heritage properties. Sorry, my presentation is not moving on at the moment. I don't know why. So I have to restart it. I'm sorry for that confusion.
Okay.
So now it's going on. Okay. So we have an evaluation process leading from a screening of a certain topic into a scoping process, into a deeper analysis process. Finally, we come on with an assessment and integration of findings, and also a monitoring process. That is the idea. And the manual of the impact assessment says that we have to have clear starting points. And one of those key issues of this manual is that attributes have to be identified which are expressing the outstanding universal value of World Heritage properties. And we also have to identify, of course, actions and how those attributes then finally will be impacted on. This is the key point of any impact assessment. So in other words, we have to have a clear knowledge about the values of World Heritage properties, what is important, why the sites are important, and why are certain attributes considered to be heritage. And secondly, we have to have a clear knowledge about attributes. So what is valued? It might be tangible or intangible elements. And what things need to be protected and conserved to maintain the place's values. And this seems to be quite easy, but in my experience, this is not so easy to have a clear finding what our heritage is about and what are the elements and attributes we finally have to preserve and what might be other fields which might be transformed. But nevertheless, this is what this manual and impact assessment is asking us to do. I show you now the case study of Zeche Zollverein, where we were working on a management plan a couple of years ago. But before I come to this management plan, I introduce to you Zollverein coal mine plant. Zollverein coal mine plant, you see some pictures here, is the largest coal mine plant has been the largest coal mine plant in Germany. It's in the Ruhrgebiet, which is the most densely agglomerated region in Germany, in the west of Germany. But what you can see here is that large parts of this really vast industrial mining site have been transformed in recent years. For instance, this is the so-called coal washing plant, which has been transformed into a museum. And you see also that this transformation process, of course, this escalator leading into the museum, this is a new element which was added on to this industrial mining site. So there are transformations already. The site was inscribed in 2001 in the World Heritage List. Just to give you an orientation, this is, you see on the top left, the Ruhrgebiet, and you see also the city of Essen, just more or less at the center of the Ruhrgebiet, and you see also an aerial view of, it's not the entire mining site, it's just a part of it. The site as such is much larger. And at least some impressions of shaft 12-1 and also the so-called coking plant. This is the largest, this has been the largest coal coking installation in Germany for a long while time. This is how the site looked in 1986 when working activities were stopping. So that meant, of course, that a lot of job opportunities in Essen suddenly were no longer existing. So for the city of Essen, this was not only in economic affairs, also psychologically for the people working there, this was quite a hard moment. But nevertheless, the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia started immediately to declare this site as a heritage site, and since 1986 the site had also faced also rapid development. Nowadays I would call it more a cultural site. There are also new job opportunities there. More than 1,000 new jobs have been come into existence here. And finally in 2001 the site was inscribed in the World Heritage List. So we have Zollverein coking plant as the World Heritage properties than more than 20 years. There is a large ambition to develop Zollverein coal mine plant into a lighthouse in North Rhine-Westphalia. It was always the intention to show that the tradition of mining and steel cooking in the Ruhrgebiet could be also carried on in such a way that also a kind of a particular site, such as sulfide coal mine plant, could be redeveloped into a cultural site. And one of the mottos of this institution running Zeche Zollverein currently is that Zollverein should be the most beautiful coal mine plant worldwide. So we have quite a rapid development since the last 20 years, but also we have rapid transformations. Nowadays, Zollverein is an industrial touristical destination. More than 1.5 million visitors are visiting Essen annually, which means that it is the second wanted touristic destination in Germany. So that is quite a large change. But this means, of course, that issues are raised by this transformation process. Why or how far, for instance, the functional integrity would suffer under these new activities. For instance, events, of course, are radically changing. Also, the functional and also the visual appearance of the site. We also have issues about visual integrity. This is the coking plant, which is not yet restored. It's still in concept. So in 20 years, the site is so vast that preservation activities have not yet really started. But nevertheless, this is a kind of an event site nowadays. But also we have issues about how Zollverein would be connected to its surroundings. The more shiny Zollverein would get, the less the relationship to the surrounding neighborhood would be established. And there were quite some tensions already, always between the neighborhoods, which were not really sharing these new lighthouse activities of Zollverein. That at least was my opinion. So these are just some questions we found there when we were starting with the management plan. I cannot cover all those questions since I was requested here to talk about impact assessments, so I have to concentrate on some focus points of the management plans. So I will just explain you a little bit how we tried to identify what is the OUV and what are the attributes expressing the OUV, at least with one example, and how we developed the management plan from that, and how we also use the impact assessment in this management plan elaboration process. So this is a starting point for Zollverein coal mine plant, just kind of a site plan, and the site has quite a complex ownership structure. Large parts of the site are owned by one institution, but there are also other owners, which of course have different intentions to redevelop the site. So there are some issues here. So therefore we set up a kind of a process design, and one of the ideas, of course, was to include all stakeholders into this management process, which was already quite a complicated endeavor because there were a lot of stakeholders to be included. These are not even all of the stakeholders here. You have stakeholders on the regional level of the federal state. You have stakeholders on the local state. You have stakeholders coming from NGOs. There are political interests. There are content-related interests. There are heritage interests. So there are quite a lot of different interests in this site. And therefore we decided to set up an advisory committee where all those interest groups would be represented in order to accompany the elaboration of the new management plan. This is an analysis of the OUV and the attributes, and I won't go into details here. I just will concentrate a little bit on criterion 2, that Zollverein coal mine industrial complex was inscribed in the World Heritage List as an exceptional industrial monument by virtue of the fact that its buildings are outstanding examples of the application of the design concepts of the modern movement in architecture in a wholly industrial context. So why is that so? just show you a round of the three most important sites. The coking plant, which I've been mentioning already, shaft 128, which is one of the older shafts, and then shaft 12, which is one of the newer shafts of these mining activities on Zollverein. So we went through these main elements of the Zollverein coal mining plant, and we started to map attributes which would, in our opinion, be important. And this attribute mapping was related to the inscription criterions. And I cannot show you, because I have here restricted time to manage my presentation. I can not show all the details. But basically, the systematic approach is that we took the criterions and we started to identify the elements which would be, in our opinion, the most important ones, expressing the OUV. And then we would discuss this with our advisory board in order to come to a common sense what the most important attributes are. So this is the attribute mapping referring to criterion 2. And also here I go not into details, but I just show you why the site is so important for modern architecture in Germany. Large parts of the site were designed by the architects Krupp and Schwemmer, and they designed the site really as Gesamtkunstwerk, which would then also appear would have a very modern appearance in the 1920s. And the site was designed so perfectly that it was never necessary throughout the active history of the mining plant to do any transformations, actually. So this is a core point, and which is still there, and the architectural expression of the site is also still there. And these are just some attributes we identified referring to criterion 2, just to explain you the kind of methodological approach. When we did and discussed our attribute mapping, we also started to identify risks on the heritage sites, and there are a lot of risks on Zollverein. For instance, conserving and finding reuse options for this vast site is offering a lot of issues. So the preservation of built heritage as such is already a large task. I've been just explaining that the coking plant has not even been started, or only partly being started. So that is still a large issue to come. But also a lot of buildings have been restored 20 years ago, but then they have to have re-maintenance, and of course there has to come money for it. So already preserving built heritage is a huge task. But also redevelopment of the site is a huge task, because I've been explaining the ownership structure. And this is a plan showing planned development areas. And what we did then, in order to discuss with our advisory board, we started to show what these kind of redevelopment options would mean for the attributes expressing the OUV. And in doing so, we identified sightlines on this mining plant from the inner side, but also from the outside, from the wider setting. And we would then also be able to visualize what these kind of redevelopment options would mean in terms of visual integrity of the site. So very often we use visualizations just to show what future transformations would mean to a heritage site. So these are just very, very basic visualizations, where we showed that some of the redevelopment plans would cause quite large changes also to these visual relationships on the site, but also from the outside into the site. And this raised immediately discussions between the different stakeholders who of course had different interests how to deal with this site. Actually, these discussions were lasting more than 2 years long. So this says also something that there are various interests in redevelopment of this site. But it says also something that sometimes it also makes questions quite clear if you visualize such issues and such plans, because suddenly everybody can see what the future transformations might mean to a heritage site. In parallel, we also discussed legislative frameworks. So we all know that World Heritage Properties have to fulfill the requirements of the operational guidelines, but that means also that requirements, international requirements, have to come into a kind of a local and regional framework. So we've started to work also how to build up a legislative framework to maintain the site in the future. And we were also starting to map protection instruments. So I really like maps because everybody can understand them. So I cannot explain this in detail, but we basically showed how the buffer zone would work. We also suggested changes in the buffer zone, but we were also pointing on deficits in this legislative framework for the future maintenance of the site. And finally, we were also developing together a future vision for this site, which is basically that it's monument-compliant preservation coupled with structural development with focus on quality. Zollverein should stay an exemplary location for the sensitive and sustainable transformation of an industrial World Heritage site. And at the same time, preservation should be combined with innovation and transformation, but of course there can frictions come into existence. And this vision also says clearly that there are various interests at Zollverein coal mine plant. And finally, we defined fields of actions together for the next 5 to 10 years, where we also try to cover all those issues which we have came across through this elaboration process of the management plan. And this is now a kind of fields of action are now identified, also hierarchies are identified, where the future heritage managers can see how they can actually treat the heritage as a monument, but also integrate planned progress, planned touristic and educational activities, where the neighborhoods could be integrated better than it used to be in the last 20 years. And also the natural environment is an issue in Zollverein because it's such a vast site which cannot be completely redeveloped. Quality management and monitoring is also mattering. So we defined also a clear process how the site could be monitored in the future. And the quality management could take place in the future. And also the coordination on the site was analyzed by us. And it was also turned into a clear kind of organigram so that every stakeholder could find himself or herself in this management process in the future. So as a conclusion, I started with the World Heritage Convention, and I used Zollverein just as one example that this complexity of World Heritage properties can cause huge issues. And I just have shown you one example how impact assessments might help in order to manage sites, also to establish more transparency in planning processes. And if we look into the operational guidelines, we see that management should include thorough shared understanding of the property by all stakeholders, a cycle of planning, implementation, monitoring and evaluation, involvement of partners and stakeholders, capacity building, and an accountable, transparent description how this system might work. But of course, this is quite a theoretical approach. So in my view, this means that we have to have clearly identified World Heritage values. We have to have a common sense what World Heritage values are, what attributes are expressing this OUV, because otherwise it's quite impossible to maintain a site, but also to manage transformations of the site. Also, it is necessary, in my opinion, to integrate urban conservation strategies, also on industrial sites, at least if they are that large, then Solfaen, into urban development strategies, into urban planning instruments, and also the conservation of built heritage and the urban setting. And also we have to have a constant risk management. So we need to have effective instruments to monitor and assess risks. And impact assessments are just one example for that. But in my opinion, they are helpful in order to identify risks and also maybe to manage and monitor them. We also started at our UNESCO chair now a program to use heritage impact assessment as to assess risk management, and we hope that in the future we can also use this tool on this field. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. 非常谢谢这个 Professor Kuze 的非常仔细的关于那个遗产。I'd like to thank Professor Kluse for a very detailed presentation, especially on heritage impact assessment. Here in Taiwan, we often talk about environmental, societal impact assessment. But for heritage, we don't have such a comprehensive assessment mechanism, so we're very grateful for your sharing. In the following, I would like to invite our panelist. He is Professor Li, Associate Professor Li at the Department of Interior Design from China University of Technology. He's also one of the founders of ANI, of our network. Comment, and we will welcome some questions from the floor, then we will discuss with you. Okay? So, So would you like to share with us some of your response and feedbacks? So I have prepared a PowerPoint with 3 slides. And here, first of all, for the 2 presentations, respectively by Marian and Michael, I believe that they provide a very clear framework in looking at cultural heritage. And I think it is very appropriate that we arrange these 2 talks in the 3rd session of today's forum. This morning we talked about the past, and then the 2nd session we talked about future. And here in this 3rd session, we have a better idea about how to advance from past to future. Here I have prepared a very short PowerPoint slide. Here on my slide, on the left-hand side, you can see that this is the same photo that appeared in Michael's presentation. So ANI is a very important actor introducing world heritage, not just industrial heritage, to the broader audience in Taiwan. So this is one of the reports issued by ANI. In a very systematic way, it introduces these different case studies with our audience in Taiwan. So before I dive into the 2 talks, earlier we talked about justice, climate change, and then Marian, you helped us reflect upon the last 20 years of the Takil chapter, and then the discussion of heritage assessment, impact assessment. Again, we're talking about the connections, the importance of a cultural heritage. If it carries the significance to have an impact to the future generation, it means that it is not just the site that is important. It has a very deep connection with the people with the land, with the surrounding land. And that is why it is important for us to understand the evolution of these instruments. The world is changing. The heritage sites are also changing, responding to the changes in the world. And then, Michael, you talked about the importance of the usefulness of heritage impact assessment. Not long ago in Taiwan, we had a major earthquake. For cultural heritage, for historical sites, it is important not just to understand its values. For example, when an earthquake takes place, you will know what is the most important thing to protect or preserve for a heritage site. You don't have much time to react, especially in the face of a disaster. So with an instrument at hand, you will have a very clear idea. It provides a very clear guideline for us for future long-term conservation works. And for environmental assessment, by understanding the attributes, by understanding the values, in the future when disasters occur, you will know how to better handle the situation.
HI is also very important for us to ensure the sustainability of heritage sites following disasters. The image on the right, do you know what it is? It's